True Sports Network, the NFL show, as always, is brought to you by Manscaped. Make sure you check them out at manscaped.com. Use the promo code TGT20 to get 20% off your first purchase and free shipping. I want to welcome in my co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right. And I heard that, at Clemson now, since you started manscaping, your nickname is Smooth.
I don't know where you come up with this. I could honestly never in a million years come up with some of the stuff that you say, Mike.
So they don't call you Smooth?
No, not really, no.
Oh, all right. How about Hairless?
Maybe a little bit.
Do they call you Smooth Bush to Tush? All right, so make sure you check out Manscaped at manscaped.com, promo code TGT20. All right, let's talk a little NFL news today. We have some COVID happenings again, as the Texans and Colts have both entered COVID-19 protocols after the latest positive results, Sam. We went a week where nothing really happened with this, but now it seems like it is again. The Texans announced Thursday morning it is shutting down for the day after a player tested positive for COVID-19. They will work remotely. And once again, the Colts have a staff member who has tested positive. They will hold practice today. Meetings will be held virtually. This seems like this is starting to ramp up again, Sam.
Yeah, it seems to happen every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. I mean, we had, just from the past couple of hours, we have reports that the Chiefs and Colts had staffers test positive, where the Texans and Bears have each had players test positive, and there's something going on with the 49ers right now where they're holding a couple of players out of tonight's game potentially because of COVID-19, because of a test where Kendrick Bourne, a wide receiver, tested positive for COVID-19.
Yeah, and the Detroit Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford missed practice Wednesday and has been played on the reserve COVID-19 list. The team announced also Stafford is considered a high-risk close contact of a non-team member who tested positive for COVID-19, a source told ESPN's Adam Schefter. Stafford's last contact with the individual was Monday, which means he would be eligible to come off the reserved COVID-19 list and play against the Minnesota Vikings, pending 5 straight days of negative testing.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to have him around. I think Detroit's season's already over. I think you agree with me on that. Because they lost to the Colts, and they have a hard stretch of the year coming up for them right now. But that game against Minnesota, I mean, if you lose that game, your season really is over. But if you're able to beat Minnesota, maybe there's just an outside shot that we have a chance to get back into the playoff hunt. For Detroit, I think this is a do-or-die game, so they have to have Stafford on board.
All right, the Dallas Cowboys are making another change at quarterback, and they're running out of options here in Dallas. And the Dallas Cowboys will go with either Garrett Gilbert or Cooper Rush at quarterback for Sunday's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, according to Coach Mike McCarthy. Rookie Ben DiNucci completed 21 of 40 passes for 180 yards with 4 sacks, 2 lost fumbles, and I don't know. Is there a difference between Garrett Gilbert, Cooper Rush, or Ben DiNucci?
I really don't think there is, which is kind of why I was surprised they decided to make this move whatsoever, because I know Cooper Rush has been there for a while, so he's been in the system for a little bit. He's kind of bounced around on that team. But Ben DiNucci, I mean, didn't play terribly. Obviously, I mean, he wasn't phenomenal either, but just 2 fumbles. If you can get rid of the fumbles, it's a decent game for your third-string quarterback to have. I don't think there's a huge difference between him and Cooper Rush or Garrett Gilbert. I mean, these guys are all pretty much the same at this point. You're just kind of shaking the barrel here, hoping something works out. It's Dallas, though. The season's over for them, and Mike McCarthy's probably going to be on the chopping block very soon.
Yeah, he should be at least. Next up, the Miami Dolphins have put Myles Gaskin on the injured reserve. This affects a team that we think may have a shot before this is all said and done to possibly make a playoff run.
Yeah, it could be big for the Miami Dolphins because Gaskin's been their best rusher so far. He's been their guy who's kind of come out, stepped up, and really played a large role for them. He had 91 rushing yards against the Jets in Week 6, 47 this past weekend against the Rams, and a touchdown. For the year, he's got 387 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He's been the best back on that team so far. And a guy like Jordan Howard, who they haven't really played or used whatsoever, he's still on the roster. He's going to probably have to get playing time because Matt Breida, another back they brought in this offseason, he's also hurt. And that leaves Jordan Howard as potentially your top running back option. And they weren't planning on using him very much this year. I thought he could be traded away even. And now we're seeing a situation now where he might come in and be a guy they have to use immediately.
Yeah. How about this? The Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster was fined $5,000 by the NFL for showing too much leg. Sam, did you hear about that one?
Yeah, I saw him and James Conner. I believe both of them were fined $5,000 for wearing their socks too low or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not read up on the NFL dress code, so I don't know exactly what they enforce, but to me, that seems kind of silly.
Yeah. Well, most of the stuff the NFL does seems kind of silly because it is. All right. Tonight, Thursday Night Football, the San Francisco 49ers will battle the Green Bay Packers in a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. I would say with the 49ers, this is the only way we're going to talk about an NFC Championship game with them. And tonight's game, the last twice last year, the Packers got manhandled by the 49ers. So the 49ers enter this game wounded, and they really need to win this game. And they've lost both starting quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo and Pro Bowl tight end George Kittle to long-term injuries and a blowout loss to Seattle. Now they sit at 4-4. The defending champions are in their last in their division in one game behind a wild card playoff spot. Their second half starts with Green Bay tonight before going on the road to face the Rams and the Saints before coming home to face the Bills. So this is a must-win game for the 49ers, no matter how many injuries they have.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at an NFC that could feature a bunch of 10-win teams, and you might only make a wild card spot if you have 9 or 10 wins. So the 49ers cannot afford to drop 3 of the next 4 games. I know they're all against good opponents, but they really cannot go 1-3. Coming up here, they split. If they're 2-2 over this next stretch, that keeps them alive. I think that's the best thing you can hope for. But against Green Bay tonight, they don't have a shot, really. I mean, maybe because Green Bay's defense didn't play that well the past week, maybe you show some holes. But at the same time, I mean, your quarterback's going to be like Nick Mullins. Your running back, Tevin Coleman, got hurt last game. I mean, who's even going to be your star right now? Who's even healthy enough to be your starter? I have no faith in the 49ers going out and winning this game.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers has had trouble in San Francisco. He was made to look like an amateur last year during the 2 matchups against the 49ers. Nick Bosa terrorized him in the NFC Championship game. Rodgers was sacked 3 times, never looked comfortable in the pocket. In the regular season matchup, they held him to 104 yards as the Packers were embarrassed 37-8. But Bosa isn't around for this one, and this leaves basically the 49ers defense ripe for the picking.
Yeah, it really does. And at this point, Green Bay's defense, which was worse, obviously, between the 2 teams, their last meeting, Green Bay's defense is better now. That may not be saying much because they've struggled a little bit here the past couple of weeks. But at the same point, the 49ers, they don't have much of a leg to stand on defensively. No Richard Sherman, no Nick Bosa. You traded away DeForest Buckner for a guy, Javon Kinlaw. Well, it can be good, but he's not going to be DeForest Buckner, certainly not immediately at the very least. So you have a lot of holes there. I mean, you don't even have D Ford available. And it's just building up so much for them over the past couple of weeks to the point where this is not even an elite defense. It's not even an elite team. If Garoppolo was healthy, they might have a shot. If they had Garoppolo and Kittle, I think they could have still made the playoffs. But they're going to miss those guys for the rest of the year, or most of the rest of the year. I think it would be curtains on this team.
Actually, I think if you had Mostert, you'd have a chance. And I think the problem here is, what will the 49ers offense look like? Devastating injuries just keep piling up. Actually, they could probably just fill an entire hospital ward for players. And with no Mostert, no Kittle, no Garoppolo, no Jeff Wilson, no Tevin Coleman, wide receiver Deebo Samuel has a pulled hamstring and is sidelined also. So what will the 49ers offense look like? Jerick McKinnon was supposed to replace Mostert, but The Athletic today, from what I read, claims that he's been suffering from a case of tired legs, and he rushed for a grand total of -1 yards against the Seahawks. That leaves you with JaMychal Hasty, an undrafted rookie, to handle majority of the backfield carries, and he has 29 yards on 2.5 yards per carry. Nick Mullins has played well from time to time, but they're going to have to throw the ball tonight to be able to win the game. They don't have any wide receivers because they can't run the ball because they don't have any running backs. And my question is this: is there a safer bet this week in the NFL than taking the Green Bay Packers and giving the 5.5 points?
There really might not be. I mean, talk about the wide receivers. Brandon Ayuk and Kendrick Bourne and Deebo Samuel, they're on the COVID-19 list today because of the Kendrick Bourne test that came back positive. So you might not even have those guys for tonight's game, in which case you're out your top 2 receivers basically in Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. So at that point, what do you have offensively? No George Kittle. You're missing your top 2 or 3 running backs. You're potentially missing your top 2 or 3 receivers. I mean, you're basically putting out there like a JV squad at that point.
Yeah, and you got to figure the Packers are hungry for revenge, but the 49ers are nowhere close to healthy. Got to cut down on the revenge a little bit since the entire team to beat the hell out of you last year is gone. And it would have been nice to see how these teams would have competed against each other at full strength, because I think it would have given us an idea exactly how good, or if the Packers had improved since last year. I think if both teams were completely healthy, I would pick the 49ers tonight, but they aren't. And I'm picking the Green Bay Packers, something like 31-13.
No, I agree with you. They're fully healthy. I would have leaned slightly towards the 49ers just because of the running game. The fact that Green Bay has not fixed that interior. But we do have Greg Recchi in the chat here saying it's amazing how much of a difference one man can make on defense. I think that's referring to Nick Bosa, I'm pretty sure. But
yeah, plus the fact that he spelled defense wrong, because there's an S in there, Greg. You can tell he's been in Canada too long. I'm just kidding, Greg. But so I don't know. I mean, without Nick Bosa, even if they had Nick Bosa tonight, I still think the biggest loss here for the 49ers is Raheem Mostert. Because if you remember last year in the championship game, I mean, how many times did Jimmy G throw the ball? Wasn't he like 6 for 8 or something?
Yeah, it was under 100 total pass yards. I'm going to look it up right now because he had a ton of rushing yards in that game. I'll find the number. He had 220 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns on 29 carries.
Yeah, and what was the passing?
I'll pull that really quick. I do remember it was significantly low. Like we were crushing Drew Garoppolo going into the Super Bowl. It was 6 for 8 for 77 yards.
All right, what do you think about Jim Harbaugh, reportedly open to returning to coach in the NFL?
Well, he's open to returning to coach in the NFL because he's going to be fired at Michigan anytime now. I mean, really, what has he done while at Michigan? I'm pretty sure last year he had a shot and they ended up losing to Ohio State down the stretch. Maybe it was 2 years ago now at this point. But he has not been able to pull it out in Michigan. They got upset by Michigan State this past weekend. I mean, that was something that shouldn't have happened whatsoever. So Harbaugh, yeah, you're open to returning to the NFL because your time in college is about up.
Yeah, and I mean, what he did in Michigan, though, Sam, was he took a team that was winning 6 or 7, maybe 8 games a year, and he did get them to the point where they're winning 9 or 10 games every year. So I think you're dealing with Ohio State is the big dog there. And the problem is with that rivalry, people in Michigan don't like losing to Ohio State. And, if he would have beat Ohio State last year or the year before, I don't think people would be so apt to get rid of him. And I think the people of Michigan, if they want Jim Harbaugh gone, are crazy, Sam. I think you're crazy for the way you spoke of Jim Harbaugh.
Let me put it this way. You're probably not going to get a better head coach than Jim Harbaugh. I'll admit that. The issue is that he's been there for how many years now? 5 or 6 at this point, and they haven't made the college football playoffs yet. That's probably the biggest concern for the program is when do you hit the peak you're going to hit with him as a head coach? And when do you just scramble and say, try something else?
Well, how long has he been there, Sam?
I was thinking 5 or 6 years, but I'm going to pull up right now. He's been there for 6 years.
6 years.
This is 6 years.
What's his record?
His record with Michigan is 48-19.
Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it, Sam?
No, that's really good, Mike. But no national championships. He doesn't have a bowl.
Dude, wait a second.
Wait, no,
in the last 70 years, Michigan won a national championship in 1998. Bo Schembechler did not win a national championship, did he? Or was he? Yeah, 98. Bo was already gone. Bo's last game, I think, was the 89 Rose Bowl or the 90 Rose Bowl. So, nobody calls Bo Schembechler on it. The problem is, Michigan has these expectations that they're an all-time great program. And if you go with the history of their entire program, maybe they are. But if you go to the last 70 years, I can name you 10 programs at least that are better than Michigan. I think Michigan fans are not as big as they wish they were. And if you look at it, Ohio State owned them before Jim Harbaugh got there. When's the last time Michigan beat Ohio State? Wasn't it like 1910 or something?
It's been a long time. I can't even tell you. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know it's been ridiculously long.
Yeah, so my question is it even a rivalry? I mean, is it just
no? It's rivalry on one side. Michigan thinks it's a rivalry, but it's just a beatdown for Ohio State usually.
Yeah, Ohio State fans laugh at them. It was like a couple weeks ago when Michigan State beat them. All the Ohio State fans, all you got to do to beat Michigan is put state in your name.
Yeah, I mean, you're right though. They have lost those games. That's probably the biggest issue though. With Michigan brought Harbaugh in. I think the one goal that their fans had was just to beat Ohio State. And not being able to do that is kind of weighed on them to the point where they're calling for him to be fired. Now, should he be fired? I was always leaning towards yes.
Come on. He's 48-19. What was the program before he got there?
I'll go make sure I check in a second, but I'm guessing significantly worse than when he did get there. But the year before he got there, they were 5-7.
All right. What was the year before that?
7-6. Hang on, I'll pull up the previous head coach. So the previous head coach in 4 years with Michigan went 31-20.
All right. And this guy's 48-19. He had 2 more years and he still lost less games. I mean, this makes no sense because when you look at this, how many teams does Ohio State lose to? I mean, Ohio State may lose to Clemson or Alabama in a national semifinal, but there's not too many games that Ohio State's losing. And Urban Meyer already had a head start because Urban Meyer came in for a guy in Jim Tressel who had built them back into a national power. So this is not like, I mean, Urban Meyer walked into a good situation. Ryan Day walks into the situation where Urban Meyer coached him before him. So the history here of Ohio State is to have great football coaches. It's been that for this entire century. And to think that Michigan fans think that all of a sudden Jim Harbaugh can just wave a magic wand and beat Ohio State. Has there ever been an instance in these 6 years where Michigan had as much talent as Ohio State?
Probably not. Maybe 1 year at most.
Yeah,
I think maybe 2018 potentially, but probably not.
Yeah, but 2018, I think, was the year where Michigan looked really good. They lost the game. Ohio State got better as the year went on. My point is this. It's kind of like punishing Archie Manning because he never got the Saints to a Super Bowl. I mean, but you can only do so much when you're working with shit. And Michigan's not working with shit anymore. And the reason they're not is because they got Jim Harbaugh. Once again, the 2 years before he got there, 7-6, 5-7. What was Harbaugh's first year there?
They were 10-3.
All right. So basically over 6 years, his average record is what, about 8-3, 9-3?
Yeah, I think 9-3 would probably be the average I'm looking at now.
And the 4 years before he got there, they probably averaged about 6 or 7 games a win or season. So they were right around a 500 program. And the problem is this: you don't just have to deal with Ohio State in the Big Ten. You got to deal with Wisconsin. You got to deal with Michigan, or not Michigan, but Michigan State. I mean, Penn State. You've got some really good programs there. I think they are a little overrated. But Jim Harbaugh, for most of the 6 seasons, has been in a major bowl game. And I don't remember any losing seasons. And once again, 40-19 or whatever he is, 48-19, is a pretty damn good record.
Yeah, Michigan's last win over Ohio State came in 2011, so it's been close to a decade now since they beat them. But again, I guess from what you're saying, you're convinced me you can't really put that all on John Harbaugh because there is a talent deficit usually. I just think that, let me put it this way. If your goal is to win a national championship, how do you move forward at Michigan?
Well, yeah,
you're not winning this year.
It takes time to be able to build to what Ohio State's done. The other thing is this: it takes money. And it takes the ability to cheat at an unprecedented level, the way Ohio State does. So you're not just dealing with coaching football. You got to deal with boosters at Ohio State that are not on the up and up. I'm sure they aren't in Michigan either, but the Ohio State boosters seem to be more prolific at it.
They do pull in quite a bit of talent pool every single year.
Yeah, I mean, this is a place where Joe Burrow wasn't good enough to start, so he had to go to LSU. And that's Joe Burrow's not the only quarterback that had to leave there and ended up being pretty damn good too. And the other thing to remember is this: Jim Harbaugh coaches more of a pro style game. I mean, I think Jim Harbaugh, if I'm him, I return to the NFL just because wherever he goes in the NFL is going to win almost immediately. And we could talk about Harbaugh, and I think he's a better NFL coach. But if you look at what he did in college at Stanford, he took that program from nothing to, by the time he got to the end there, instead of getting beat 50-0 by USC, he's beaten USC 50-0. And I just think the people of Michigan need to chill out because it's probably going to take another 3 or 4 more years to get to that. And who could they bring in at Michigan that would be able to compete with Ohio State and beat Ohio State immediately or within 3 years even?
Well, that would be the argument for keeping him, obviously. And I've made the same argument if we want to talk about the NFL. I've made the same argument for Mike Tomlin. You cannot fire people like him or Harbaugh because you're not going to get anyone better. the next guy they're bringing is probably going to be worse.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh has coached at a Super Bowl. He averages 10 wins a season at his college team, and that college team wants to fire him. Now, I think Jim Harbaugh, for the most part, is a whiny baby. I find him annoying, but I can tell you this. I would rather have Jim Harbaugh running my program than Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is maybe the greatest college coach of all time, or one of the greatest college coaches of all time, but I think he's also maybe not one of the greatest human beings of all time.
Yeah, I know there have been plenty of stories that come out in the past couple of years about Urban Meyer. Even before that, even before taking Ohio State job, there were stories. Yeah. I would rather have a guy like Harbaugh. Because Harbaugh, you're right. Harbaugh makes a lot of noise. And I don't necessarily like coaches that make a ton of noise like that. But at the same point, I think I know who Jim Harbaugh is at the very least, and I would feel more faithful in having him as the head coach of the program.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh's a tough SOB. He was when he played. I mean, he almost got the Colts to the Super Bowl in, what was that, 95? They went to the championship game against the Steelers. They were probably about a foot away from catching a Hail Mary that would have put them in the Super Bowl, and they could have beaten the Dallas Cowboys. I think they were a tougher matchup for the Cowboys that year. People forget, earlier in that season, the Colts went to Dallas and beat Dallas, I think, like 26-24. So Jim Harbaugh's a hard-nosed guy who gets things done. And I think if you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, you just need to chill out. And if you are an NFL fan, if I'm a dude like Jerry Jones and I've got all the money in the world, I'd throw about, $130 million for 10 years at him.
I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, we're bringing this up now. I mean, he was successful. People forget how good he was with San Francisco. Their worst year was 8-8. It was final year there. Prior to that, they hadn't won fewer than 11 games per year. He finished with a 44-19-1 record during his 4 years with the 49ers, and they went to a Super Bowl. If that's what you're promising to bring into a team, even if it's only for 4, even if you're only sticking around for 4 years with a team, if you're Jared Jones and you really want to win a Super Bowl, wouldn't you much rather have him than Mike McCarthy?
Well, dude, if I'm anybody and I want to win a Super Bowl, I'm going to bring in Jim Harbaugh. There's not that many coaches outside of John Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, and maybe a handful of other guys. There's nobody I would rather have coaching my NFL team than Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think he's in a situation where if he could walk back into the NFL, he could probably be a top 10 coach just from joining in immediately.
Oh, I think he's top 5.
Really? You go that far?
I would go as far to say top 3. I would put him behind his brother and Bill Belichick.
Really? I don't know if I would go that far.
There's not too many choices out there for great coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think there's some other guys out there who are doing pretty good themselves, so I wouldn't necessarily throw them under the bus yet. For Jim
I'm not
Harbaugh
throwing anybody under the bus because the fact is this: Jim Harbaugh was highly successful in the NFL. So it's not like I'm saying a guy that's never coached in the NFL is going to come from college and be the 3rd or 4th best coach. I'm saying a guy that has coached in the NFL, been successful, been to the Super Bowl, and with the 49ers, I don't think it was as much Harbaugh's fault as it was the guys doing the drafting and running the organization. I mean, John Lynch did a great job of cleaning things up there, and Greg Woody Hayes was no angel either, and neither was Jim Tressel. So, Greg, you'll agree with me about Ohio State, I guess, because Ohio State, if you're Michigan, you're playing against a stacked deck when it comes to the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, a lot of top programs are like that.
Well, I think this, even if you're not a program, a lot of programs are like that.
Oh, yeah.
Probably 90% in college football. Clemson's like that. Dabo Swinney's a hypocrite. Nick Saban, come on. Those guys are there to make money and win games. And that's fine, but when you're a college football coach, it should be different. And it's not those guys' fault because everything revolves around the money you bring into the school. And I can also tell you this: I think Michigan's going to lose again this week. I think Indiana beats them.
Yeah, Indiana's been playing fairly well so far this year. They're on a bit of a hot streak.
Yeah, they're undefeated. They beat Penn State. They beat Rutgers, which would normally not be a big deal. But Rutgers did beat Michigan State the week before that. Michigan State beat Michigan. I know that doesn't mean anything because matchups are a lot. But I think the Indiana Hoosiers are ranked 13th in the nation. And I never, ever thought I would have said that. But then again, if you'd have told me the only way that would ever happen would be there would be a plague, I would buy it.
Well, when was the last? Have they ever been ranked that high before? When was the last time they were ranked that high? Because I remember during my lifetime.
Probably Bill Mallory back in the late 80s, maybe like 1987. Because I know the 87 team actually played Michigan State for the right to go to the Rose Bowl. Michigan State beat them. They had, I think it was Lorenzo White, who was a great running back at Michigan State, who played, I think, for the Houston Oilers after that. But Michigan State beat Indiana 27-3. Indiana went on to, I think, play Florida State in a bowl game. I think somewhere around 87 through 90, I think they might have been ranked up around 10 to 15. I think that's the last time that they beat Ohio State. I think was 1989. And then in 1990, we tied them. I mean, Indiana tied them, so I can, not show my bias here. But IU beat them, I think, in 88 or 89. Bill Mallory was a great football coach. And the powers that be at Indiana, once Bill Mallory had taken them from crap, because Bill Mallory took over for Sam Weiss. Sam Weiss then takes the Bengals to the Super Bowl. But Sam Weiss was an utter failure at Indiana. I think they went like 3-8 in 1983, and he got the Bengals head coaching job off of that, which makes a lot of sense if you know anything about the Bengals. But after that, Bill Mallory came in, and by the time you get to like 1986, Indiana's a bowl team. And they stayed a bowl team into the early 90s, probably about 93, 94. And then Mallory had a few years where they were like 6-7, 5-7. And the powers that be at IU thought that, they needed somebody to bring somebody else in that could put them over the top. And that just never happened. Firing Bill Mallory was the worst thing they ever did. And basically from Bill Mallory up until Terry Hepner was hired there, which would have been earlier this decade, maybe. Terry Hepner was a really good football coach. He got him to a bowl game, but then he tragically passed away because he got cancer. But outside of Hepner, Bill Mallory, and John Pont, that's about it. John Pont was the coach who took Indiana to the Rose Bowl in 1968. Indiana lost to O.J. Simpson and USC 14-3. The interesting story with John Pont is in 1990, I think it was 1990 or 91, I think it was maybe early 91, he came to Mount St. Joseph's, which was a D3 school in Ohio. It's like 25 minutes from my house. I live over the border in Indiana. And he took over the program at Mount St. Joe. And I got a call one day, and it was John Pont. And, I'm an Indiana football fan, so I had John Pont call me. That's cool. And I'd gotten out, or I'd basically left college in 1988 because I was an idiot. And Coach Pont called me and he said, would you be interested in coming and playing quarterback? So I agreed to meet him because he was John Pont. And I went and met him, nicest guy in the world, but they didn't have a football field. They were going to have to play at a high school field. They were a D3 program starting out their first year. So I knew that was going to be losing a lot more brain cells than I'd already lost. So I decided against going to Mount St. Joe. If I had to do over again, I probably would have went, because I never went and played anywhere after that. I did go to Cincinnati Bible College and played basketball for like a couple months before I got tired of that. But I was too old by then. But it was cool because John Pont, I mean, we sat there and we talked about the 1968 season forever because that was really his only success there. And of course, the other Indiana football coach who was a success, at least somewhat at Indiana, was Lee Corso, who in 1979 took the Hoosiers to the Holiday Bowl where they upset BYU. And I think Gifford Nielsen was the starting quarterback. They beat him like 38-37. Was it Gifford? Yeah, I think it was Gifford Nielsen. So that was Indiana's big moment. And they had a quarterback by the name of Tim Clifford that went to Coleraine High School. They ended up getting drafted in the 12th round by the Chicago Bears. And the interesting thing there was Tim Clifford, one of the defensive coordinator, I think, for the Coleraine team he played on was actually my uncle.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there's all kind of interesting or non-interesting stories there. It's interesting to me, probably not interesting to anybody else, but that's my run-in with John Pont and Indiana football. And there you go.
But you were right. You got that great memory when it comes to football. But Indiana, they did beat Ohio State in 1988. And they were ranked. They peaked out at number 11 in 1987.
Yeah, and we blew them out in 88, I think, in Bloomington.
Yeah, let me look at the score real quick. It was
like 38-10 or something, wasn't it?
41-7.
41-7. And I think 89 or 90, we tied Ohio State. And then that's been it until this year, where we will crush Ohio State at Ohio State here in a few weeks on our way to playing in the national semifinals against the Cincinnati Bearcats.
You know what? That'd be a very interesting thing to see happen. You were right. They tied in 1990.
Yeah, and I would be confused on who to cheer for.
Yeah, who would you pick in that situation?
Who would I pick to cheer for?
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know. Probably Indiana. I'm not sure, though. I like Luke Fickell. He's a really good guy. I've got to hang out with him a few times. Same thing with Tom Alleno. Great guy. I've got to spend some time with him. I would probably just basically cheer for whoever was losing during the game.
Hey, you know what? That's a pretty good resolution to the problem.
But I can tell you this. I mean, Luke Fickell is a great football coach. And if they were to play each other with 2 or 3 weeks to prepare, UC would thump them, I think. Because Luke Fickell's as good as it gets college football-wise as a coach. And if he stays at Cincinnati, he will turn them into a national power that's in the top 10 every year.
There you go.
He's basically Brian Kelly with the ability to coach a little bit better and with a lot better people skills. Because Brian Kelly is just basically a self-promoter, where Luke Fickell's a guy that really cares about the people around him. Brian Kelly cares about Brian Kelly. You know, Luke Fickell, if Luke Fickell was to go to Notre Dame would be back like they were when Ara Parseghian was there, or Newt Rockne, or one of those guys. Luke Fickell would blow that program up and put them where they used to be instead of where they are now, which is basically a top 10 team, but you know they're never going to win a national championship.
Yeah, no way. I mean, they could lose to Clemson without Trevor Lawrence this weekend.
Yeah, they could. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I think Notre Dame will win, but even if Notre Dame wins, they'll just play Clemson in the ACC championship game with Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence
get thumped.
Yeah, they'll get the crap smacked out of them. So,
yeah,
and that'll lead us to a Clemson Indiana or a Clemson Cincinnati national championship game.
Exactly. That's the exact timeline we're going to follow here, Mike.
Yeah, and you guys would beat the hell out of IU. Cincinnati's a lot better than Indiana. Cincinnati.
Wait, they've been winning games the past 2 years. They've won 11 games in 2018, 11 games in 2019, and then they won both bowl games those 2 years.
Yeah, Cincinnati's legit, and I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better defense in the nation. And Desmond Ridder is a dual-threat quarterback who started off the season a little bit slow, but is playing much better now. So the Cincinnati Bearcats, we had Joe Kelly, who does the Bengals show with me every Wednesday night, and he's like, oh, they're not legit. They couldn't go beat the Washington Huskies because Joe played at Washington. And when I watch the Cincinnati Bearcats, they can beat anybody playing right now. SMU, and who did they just beat?
I can pull it up.
Memphis. They blew out Memphis and SMU. Memphis and SMU are teams that can give about anybody a game. And Cincinnati completely dominated them. Cincinnati will go to Houston this week, and they will completely dominate Houston. Their problem is there's no ranked teams left on their schedule as of right now. They did beat Army relatively easy at the start of the year. They did struggle with that triple option that Army runs. And I believe SMU was ranked like 13th or 14th in the nation when UC beat them by 30. But the Cincinnati Bearcats are for real. And if the NCAA is legit, which we know they're not, the Bearcats will end up in the Final Four.
Yeah, the Bearcats, they beat Army, which was 22nd in the nation, by 14 points, and they just killed SMU by, I think, was it 29 or something like that. And then the SMU is number 16. So the Bearcats are number 6 right now in the AP poll.
Yeah, and that Memphis team that they blew out last week is a good football team and has been for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, Memphis has been, even since Paxton Lynch left, they've been a pretty good program. I mean, they had 12 wins last year.
Yeah, they never dropped off. They actually were the only 2 losses Cincinnati had last year, back-to-back weeks, last game of the season, and then in the AAC championship game. But, I mean, UC was undefeated and I think ranked in the top 10 going into those 2 games last year. So the first one, Memphis handled them pretty good. The second one, UC should have beat them but didn't. But Bearcats are for real. But this is an NFL show, so I can't believe people are still listening. All right, Sam. You know what to do. Tell everybody about how you shave your balls.
Use the Lawnmower 3.0. It's got a nice little light on it. You can find it at manscaped.com. And when you go to manscaped.com, make sure you use the promo code TGT20 when you check out. On your first order, you get 20% off. You also get free shipping. And it helps out the show a lot. So please go to manscaped.com and use promo code TGT20 at checkout on your first order, 20% off and free shipping.
All right. And Steve Risley just sent in a message about the manscaping. He wanted to know that if it comes with a magnifying glass too.
You know what? I didn't see one in there when I opened the package, but you never know.
And Steve Risley never asked that, but I know that Steve Risley's watching.
Oh, I know he didn't. I know he definitely didn't. But
I'm trying to brighten his day if he's watching, and we need to get him on anyways. We need to have him come on tomorrow and pick the games with us.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Follow Sam Teets at SamTeets33. Follow me at Grueling Truth. Go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code TGT20 for 20% off your first order and free shipping. So make sure you check them out. So for now, and we will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock to pick all the NFL games. For now, he's Sam Teets. I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening and watching to The Grueling Truth, where the legends